This debate is about you. And it's really simple, because it's about your job. Or if not your job, the job of someone else that you know. And it's about making sure that the sacrifices that you have made to fix our economy aren't wasted. Because, make no mistake, if we cut ourselves off from Europe, from the countries that we trade with more than anyone else, then our hard-won economic recovery will simply be thrown away. It's also about who we are. A Britain that leads in the world by standing tall in our own European backyard. A Britain prepared to work with other countries on the things we can't possibly sort out on our own. So don't let UKIP or anyone else put all of that at risk. We're better off in Europe, richer, stronger, safer. And that's why I will fight to keep us in, for the sake of jobs, for the sake of our clout in the world, for the sake of Britain.
We're having this debate. At last, it's taken a very long time. Just imagine, though, we weren't debating whether we should stay or leave. Just imagine we were debating whether we should join the European Union. And I put it to you that what we ought to do is vote yes in a referendum to join a club that will cost us £55 million a day as a membership fee, that will give us thousands of new laws over which our own Parliament and you, the electorate, can make no difference. It'll mean an open border, unconditionally, to 485 million people from across the whole of Europe, many of them from very poor countries, and they can come here and work and live and settle and bring their families and do as they wish. And it would also mean that we would have to cut our links with other parts of the world, the Commonwealth, the Anglosphere, and many other parts of the world, because we'd lose the ability to make our own trade deals. I know the result of that referendum. You wouldn't join it. The debate here today is between a tired status quo defending a crumbling European Union that frankly isn't working anymore, and a fresh approach which says let's be friendly with Europe, let's trade with Europe, but not be governed by their institutions.
I wonder if I can read you the words from a very prominent politician back in 2008. It's time to give the British people a real referendum on Britain's membership of the European Union. And there we are, there's a very fresh-faced, carefree politician there in that poster. Why are we still waiting?
Well, if everyone can read the small print, which I suspect you can't, what it said... No, I don't mean the small print, I mean in the leaflet. What it said was, at the time we were debating a new change in the rules, which is exactly what I was just referring to with Deborah. At the time in 2008, there was a new treaty, the Lisbon Treaty. This is the treaty where, as Nigel Farage rightly points out, the Conservative Party changed radically their attitude towards it. I had exactly the same view in 2008, 2009, 2010, namely, when the rules change, when new things are asked of you, powers which rightly belong to you, then it is your decision in a referendum.
But the trouble is, you're defining transfer of powers in terms of treaties. There is a possibility that actually there won't be any treaty change. Because, in fact, what's happened since your beloved euro has gone into a tailspin is, without using treaties, they've managed with the Eurozone countries to acquire yet more power at the centre. Sure. And surely, there is a very urgent need to have this. This isn't flippant. And everybody in this room, over the age of 55, and I bet there are many in this room who voted as my parents did, yes, but they voted yes to a common market. So,
I've got here a leaflet from Nigel Farage. Can I just finish the point? This is a leaflet that Nigel Farage's party distributed in the recent Eastleigh by-election. You may remember it. It says here that 29 million Romanians and Bulgarians may come to this country. There aren't even 29 million Romanians and Bulgarians living in Romania and Bulgaria. It is simply not true. Let's have this debate, John, but let's have it based on fact. Let me give you one more fact. 1 out of 7 of every company, new company created in this country, are created by people who come here, pay their taxes, play by the rules.
You didn't answer the question. You tried to do trickery with the 29 million, saying there aren't 29. You know why? Because 2 million have left already, and they've gone to Italy and to Spain. Nick, you didn't answer the basic question. I'm not claiming 29 million people have the right to come to Britain.
Yes, you do.
I'm claiming 485 million people have the total, unconditional right to come to this country if they want to. And I think you're quite right. You're quite right. The fact is, if we're members of the European Union, we have the complete free flow of people. Are you denying that?
Yes, it is not unqualified.
You are denying
It is not the case that anyone can move to this country and simply claim benefits, simply
Didn't mention benefits. You keep doing benefits. We're talking about the free movement of people.
Well, I don't understand. In pursuing the withdrawal from the European Union, we would make our country poorer if we did what UKIP said.
The jobs would go. Nigel Farage.
Well, they would go. The jobs would go.
Foreign direct investment is an important point. It is a key point. And I so well remember, Nick, you and all your gang, all the big corporates, all telling us 12 years ago that if we didn't join the euro, remember that? If we didn't join the euro, all investment into Britain would cease, the City of London would disappear, and all I can say is thank God we didn't listen to you. Otherwise, we'd have been in one hell of a mess.
My view is we shouldn't be sacrificing a single job just to fulfil this dogmatic view that we should turn our backs on the rest of the world and on Europe. 3 million jobs is 3 million pay packets, is millions of families in this country being able to pay their bills, which they otherwise wouldn't. And that's why this is, at the end of the day, about jobs.
I have to say, there is...
when you ask, once again, Nick, you just show you don't really understand the worlds of commerce and trade. Do you know, when the World Trade Organization meets to discuss global trade, the British representatives are shown the door and asked to leave. Yeah. The world's 6th largest trading nation, the world's 8th largest manufacturing nation, is not allowed to be present in the room.
It's not true.
Because we're members of a European Union, so we have to be represented by a Dutch bureaucrat whose name no one knows and who nobody can vote for. A quite extraordinary state of affairs. We are banned, forbidden from making our own trade deals, with countries like India or Canada or Australia or New Zealand. People who would, at the drop of a hat, sign trade deals with us, we are prevented from doing so. And the reason is, people like Nick don't think Britain's good enough. We're just not good enough.
Unlike Nigel Farage, I actually, before I went into politics, was involved in these trade negotiations. It is simply not true what you've just heard. How on earth is it possible for UKIP to claim it is somehow patriotic to make our streets less safe?
Right.
How on earth is it possible that you can claim that somehow you're standing up for Britain if you would not actually extradite and bring back hundreds of people to face British justice?
This really gets to the heart. This really gets to the heart, doesn't it, of the differences between us. And by the way, I don't agree with Nick. Nick,
I've heard that before somewhere.
Nick, we signed our first extradition treaty in this country in 1174, 850 years ago. We currently have extradition treaties with 92 different countries all over the world. Yes, we have to cooperate on cross-border crime. We do it through extradition treaties, and we do it through organisations like Interpol, which we've been working in since 1923. All right? I, of course, want us to have sensible extradition laws, not just with the EU, but all over the world. You get arrested in Spain for something you haven't done, you may be left up to 18 months in prison without even facing a charge. We have a system of common law in this country. We've had it for 800 years.
Why did you vote against measures to help British tourists?
It is based on the presumption of innocence before guilt. It is based on habeas corpus and common law. We must defend the principles of liberty, freedom and justice in this country.
We should all defend the rights of British citizens. Why did you not vote?
I have not voted.
Mr. Clegg, I'm moderating this debate. Thank you.
I have not
Would you
voted.
like to respond to a question that was put twice?
I've been in the European Parliament now 15 years. They're getting a bit cheesed off of me over there, I've got to tell you. And I have not voted in 15 years for one single piece of legislation that has added to the power base of the European Commission in Brussels.
Even when it means British tourists who get caught up on the wrong side of the law, when on holiday, who need translation, they need help, they need lawyers, they need assistance. Why is it that UKIP dogma is so strong now, you won't even help British tourists when they're on the wrong side of the law? Actually, the House of Commons has shown that roughly 7% of all new laws are related to the European Union. But they do need to be there, that 7%, in order to make sure that you, or indeed anybody else who's exporting into the rest of the European Union, can do so without fear that the rules are somehow going to work against you.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Nigel Farage.
Oh dear, oh dear.
You've used some seconds up. I'd hurry up if I were you.
What are you on about? We had one of your friends from Brussels, Commissioner Viviane Reding, in London the other week, saying we must all sign up to the United States of Europe and we must recognise the importance of Brussels because, after all, it makes 70% of our laws. Even Gordon Brown said over half our laws are made in Brussels.
So if you believe, as I do, even if you haven't voted for the Liberal Democrats before, but if you believe that we're better off in, then at least on this occasion, on May the 22nd, in the European elections, I hope you will give us your support. Thank you.
Mr. Clegg, thank you. A minute for you. Thank you.
Trade with Europe, cooperation with Europe, friendship with Europe. But I'm British. I believe the best people to govern Britain are the British people themselves. And I believe that by divorcing ourselves from this failed project, not only will we free Britain, we'll provide a good example for much of the rest of Europe. We're going to fight damned hard in the next few weeks and put that choice on the ballot paper for you on May the 22nd.
Nigel Farage, thank you for that.
And that is all we have time for.
Mr. Farage.
Thank you. It's 40 years since the BBC debated this great question. The one thing that has remained the same, of course, is David Dimbleby. Well, almost. But apart from that, everything's changed, because in those days we were asked to stay part of a common market. It was all about trade, if you remember. Well, it wasn't true. And we find ourselves today part of a political union. We find most of our laws being made somewhere else. We find it's all rather expensive. And we have open-door immigration. Indeed, if you put to a referendum today, would we join that union? Overwhelmingly, we would say no.
Tonight I'm going to ask you to remember just one thing. If it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. You've just heard it from Nigel Farage. You'll hear it from him all evening. He'll say that we can quit the European Union, we can isolate ourselves in the world, and still protect jobs, still protect trade, still punch above our weight. That we can have all the good things of being in Europe without actually being in Europe. It's a dangerous con.
We have given false hope to those Western Ukrainians. And did you see them with their EU flags and their banners? They actually toppled a democratically elected leader. Yes, I know Ukraine's corrupt. I know he wasn't perfect, but they toppled a leader. And I do not want to be part of an emerging expansionist EU foreign policy. I think it'll be a danger to peace.
Nick Clegg.
Well, I have to say, listening to that, it seems to me if I'm the leader of the party of in, Nigel Farage is the leader of Putin. And it's just extraordinary that his loathing of the European Union is so all-consuming that he is now seeking to justify and defend the actions of a man, Vladimir Putin, who, Ukraine is one thing. Look what's happening in Syria. He is the only man on the planet who, with one telephone call to President Assad, the most brutal dictator in the world, could actually help bring the participants to that awful, awful conflict to the negotiating table. There are 200 people dying in Syria, being mowed down in Syria, being killed in Syria every single day, and Nigel Farage says he admires the way that Vladimir Putin has played, as if it's a game, the terrible humanitarian catastrophe in Syria. He admires how Vladimir Putin has behaved there. That is why I think Nigel Farage's position is absolutely indefensible.
Well, Nick, you, as Deputy Prime Minister, were happy to go and bomb Libya. You did that, and 3.5 years on, the situation in Libya is worse than it was.
Nigel Farage doesn't want to work with the Americans, he doesn't want to work with the rest of Europe, he only wants to side with Vladimir Putin, who's the only man, as I say, with one telephone call, who could bring this bloody conflict to an end.
So, Nick,
this country, Nick, has had enough of getting involved in endless foreign wars.
But these are dangerous.
Whether it's you doing it or anybody else doing it, and there is no evidence, hang on, there is no evidence that our military intervention in these countries is making life better. As I say, with you as Deputy Prime Minister, we bombed Libya, and it's worse now than it was then. And the answer to Charles's question is, I don't want to be part of a European foreign policy.
This is a dangerous fantasy. The idea that there's going to be a European Air Force, a European army, it is simply not true. The problem with people like Nigel Farage is they swing at windmills. They see conspiracies everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if Nigel Farage soon tells us that the moon landing was a fake, that Barack Obama isn't American, that Elvis isn't dead. You know, it is not going to happen.
Why do you deny your union?
He claimed last week that 485 million people were going to vacate the whole of the rest of the European continent and turn up in Britain, leaving no human habitation left in the rest of Europe. It's as silly as me saying that 5 million people living in Scotland might all move to Orpington next Tuesday. It isn't going to happen.
Nigel Farage.
Nick, when are you going to start confronting the a few simple truths and stop twisting the facts the way you did last week and you're doing this week.
Of course there are problems in some parts of the country where you get a big change in the local population. But on the whole, Nigel Farage says he basically doesn't like modern Britain. I love the diversity and the compassion and the outward-facing values of modern Britain. And I think we should be celebrating that, not denigrating it, and not trying to sort of turn the clock back. Not turning the clock back on this issue, not turning the clock back, as Nigel Farage has done by saying that people who are gay are not allowed to get married, not turning the clock back on women's rights. Nigel Farage has said that women are worth far less in the workplace if they want to have children, not turning the clock back by saying that climate change is some conspiracy. Let's go with a grain of what modern Britain is, not pretend that we somehow can turn the clock back to some 19th century bygone age which simply doesn't exist anymore.
But Nick, it is the duty of government to make sure that its own citizens have got the best chance for advancement that is possible. I mentioned the white working class. I could, of course, in London, have mentioned the Afro-Caribbean community, 50% of whose youngsters are currently unemployed. I can understand why big business supports you, because what you've done is given us a cheap labour economy.
Small businesses.
Now, that's been very good for big business, been very good for rich people to take on servants, but it has not been good for the people at the bottom of society. And we need to find a way to give people at the bottom of society and to give our young people jobs. And we will not do that with an open-door immigration policy to southern and eastern Europe.
It's all very well.
That is about putting Britain and British people first. Nick, and I'll tell you what, in the northwest of England, we are sitting on a shale gas field that is absolutely huge. If we do what the Americans have done, we can bring down the price of energy by nearly 50%. And I would say, let's not look a gift horse in the mouth. Scrap wind energy, scrap the subsidies, scrap the money for the rich landowners. Let's get fracking in the short term, and let's make sure we can give industry and ordinary people value for money.
I tell you what I don't believe in. I don't believe in the dishonesty in saying to the British people that we can turn the clock back. What next?
No,
are you going to say we should return to the gold standard?
No, we're going
or a pre-decimal currency?
This is the 21st century.
Or maybe get W.G. Grace to open the batting for England again. This is the 21st century. Yeah. It's not the 19th century. Now, Nigel Farage, I've heard this many, many times, and you'll hear it this evening, says that we should be like Switzerland or Norway. Let's just think about that for a minute. Switzerland and Norway have to pay into the European Union coffers. They have to obey all European Union laws. That's why they call it fax democracy in Norway. Everything gets decided by everybody else in Brussels. They then have to transpose it into law in Oslo. They have no British MEPs, no Norwegian or Swiss MEPs or commissioners. They have no passport checks. They have no power whatsoever. All the rules are made by foreigners. Utter powerlessness. That is how perverse the patriotism of Nigel Farage has become, that he now advocates that we become like two countries that have less power than we do in the world's largest economy.
Nick, it's great that we're actually at last, after 40 years, debating the issue. But what really matters at the end of the day isn't what I think, or what Nick thinks, what the chairman thinks, or you think. It's what the British public think, and they should be given a free and fair referendum and the opportunity to express that. But the problem is that, the elite club of career politicians and big businesses don't want you to have a say. You know why? Because they think you might give the wrong answer. They think you might say, no, we'd rather govern our own country.
I've been very clear, I've had the same view all the time, that in a parliamentary democracy such as ours, you don't have a referendum every time there's a little tweak or change or an amendment.
Right there, wasn't it?
No, because in 2008, when that leaflet was issued, let's be absolutely clear, we were being asked as a country to ratify something called the Lisbon Treaty. It was a big rewriting of the rules. That is when you should have a referendum. I think if we were to have a referendum right now or next week, I think given that we're at such a delicate stage of our economic recovery, which is so important, I think that would be put at peril. I'm not prepared to do that, but we've put into law the guarantee there'll be a referendum when the rules change again.
Hold on, we must move on.
Let's take back control of our country. Let's control our borders and have a proper immigration policy. Let's stop giving away £55 million a day as a membership fee to a club that we don't need to be a part of. Let's re-embrace the big world, the 21st century global world. Let's strike trade deals with India, New Zealand, all of those emerging, doing superbly parts of the world. Let's free ourselves up, and in doing so, let's give an example to the rest of Europe. I know the people are behind this, and I would urge people, come and join the People's Army. Let's topple the establishment who've led us to this mess.
Then there are those of us who believe and love modern Britain as it is today. Compassionate, diverse, outward-facing, who understand that there are complexities and challenges in the modern world, but who also understand that by working with other countries, we deal with those challenges and we make Britain richer, stronger and safer. In short, real remedies for the way that the world is today, not dangerous fantasies about a bygone world that no longer exists. And that is why I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we remain part of the European Union, because that is how we protect the Britain that we love.